Hello, and welcome back to the Graphic Novel Apostle Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Orenberger. I'm so happy to be here with you this Monday morning, as always. It's another one of our mini-episode weeks, and I've got just one book to cover today, one that I'm actually very excited to talk to you about, called Guns of Brixton, and we're also going to have the writer of that book, Sean Golding, on to talk to us here in a few minutes. But before we get into that, I want to first say thank you to my friend Parrish Pollard, who joined us last week on the podcast for our discussion of Bone Parish Volume 1, and I am very much looking forward to the next 4 weeks to come, as it is the month of October, and we are going to go all in on horror-style books, Halloween, and we are just going to revel in the Halloween season. I'm so excited for that, and frankly, we're going to get a zombie story even today to get us kicked off. So let's talk about it. As I mentioned, the book we're going to discuss is called Guns of Brixton, and it's going to be issue 1 primarily we focus on. We'll talk just a little bit about issue 2 that is going to be released on October 9th, so it's not out just yet. This book is written by Sean Golding, as I mentioned a moment ago. The art, including color, is done by Renzo Podesta, and letters by a creator named Jahch. This is a self-published book, so there's not a separate publishing company to identify. It is available on Amazon as a Kindle book, both in English and in Spanish. It's also available on Global Comics, which is quickly becoming one of my very favorite digital subscription services, where you can get it as a single issue or included as part of your Global Comics Gold subscription. And there are a couple of other outlets where it can be acquired in the UK and Australia. We'll talk about those when we talk to Sean a little later in this episode. To give you an idea of the story, here are a couple of paragraphs that Sean sent me about it. He said, Guns of Brixton is a high-octane comic series following the exploits of a London-based punk rock band, Rachel and the Heads of State, or Rathos for short. The band are living the punk rock mantra of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, until a fateful night after a concert in Brixton when everything changes. Dr. Thurlow Grieve, representing a shadowy organization, has released a weaponized contagion in South London, turning everyone infected into a mindless zombie. The band are forced to fight their way out, finding themselves not only immune to this infection among their fellow revelers, but with heightened reflexes and aggression as well. This book oozes rock and roll, and at the center of it is this punk rock band, Rachel and the Heads of State. And on the first page of the book, we've got a concert poster for their show they're going to be performing that evening. And it describes the band as Britain's fiercest and feistiest all-girl punk band. And as a fun throwback to the movie Point Break, where the bank-robbing surfers in that movie pulled off their heists wearing latex masks of ex-presidents of the United States, Rachel and the Heads of State take the stage wearing latex masks of different world leaders, which they throw into the audience and then just start rocking your face off. The art in this book is really frenetic, which is perfect, both for the rock and roll scenes where it shows the band performing on stage, or shots of the audience out there creating a mosh pit, or later in the issue, once much of their crowd and the people on the streets of South London have been turned into zombies, we've got some wild fight scenes, and the art just really moves. It's so dynamic. And to upend a traditional theme that you would see in a horror movie, this is zombies, but you see this a lot in slashers. It's the teenagers who are having sex or doing drugs, or maybe that just love rock and roll, who are going to be the ones who are victims. In this case, right after Rachel and the Heads of State have come off stage after their show, and they're snorting cocaine in their dressing room, which, as it turns out, has been laced with what appears to be some sort of substance that inoculates them against turning into a zombie, and seemingly supercharges them, where they are surprised even with their own abilities. Once members of their zombie audience start breaking into their dressing room and attacking them, they realize they're able to fight these things off. And once they discover that, this band goes hard. And what's great, too, is they are using the weapons they have at hand, their guitars, their drumsticks, a bass string, all of this kind of thing to fight off these zombies and escape from the building where they've been performing this concert. Now they're going to load up into their van and realize that these zombies aren't just in the building where they've been hanging out, but they're everywhere. And they are going to have to figure out some kind of plan if they are going to be able to escape this zombie attack. And we leave off at the end of issue number 1 with the sense that it's going to be a wild ride ahead, as Rachel and the Heads of State have to figure out, 1, how widespread this problem is, 2, how they can get more of the drug that allowed them to escape falling victim to whatever toxin is in the air, and 3, how they can set the world back to right. We're left at the end of this first issue knowing that we're in for big time excitement in issues 2 through 5. I got to take a sneak peek at issue number 2, and I can tell you that it is nothing but fighting zombies, fighting bad guys, all action, and I have a feeling that this series is going to be fun, fun, fun. And I'm very happy to welcome writer Sean Golding to the show at this time. Sean, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So in this book, you've chosen to combine punk rock and a zombie story. So tell me, where did the idea for this come from, and why did you want to combine those two elements particularly?
Yeah, absolutely. So music, live music, rock, punk rock, metal, all those sorts of genres are something that I'm big into. I listen to a lot of music. I like going to a lot of concerts. So I always wanted to do something in that space. Yeah, so Rachel and the Heads of State, that was where the idea came from. I had the idea of this band first. And I sort of thought, well, what would they be doing? What would this story be about? Flowed from there. So the name of the band got me thinking originally they're probably, sounds a bit political, Heads of State, maybe they're a punk rock band, a bit sort of anarchist. And then in terms of where they get their powers from, their sort of heightened senses and abilities, thought, well, what's a rock band going to be doing to get some powers? They're not going to be bitten by a radioactive spider. They're not going to have $1 billion suit of armor that they've gone and invented. They're probably going to get this from some sort of illicit substance that they're taking, sort of living that, sex, drugs, and rock and roll sort of lifestyle. And that's where it came from. And then I thought, well, there is a link between where they get their powers and these zombies that they are fighting against, which is more revealed in issue 2, which is coming out in a week.
So I love when the reader is rewarded for having some background information already about, say, the subject matter. And maybe I should say it this way. I love when a writer is able to accomplish both presenting a story that you can enjoy just on its own terms, but then also being laced with deeper references for people who are familiar with a genre already. I will tell you off the bat, it did not click in my mind when I picked up the book that Guns of Brixton is the title of a Clash song. And then after I looked at that first cover for issue 1, I actually had to look at it a few times before it kind of clicked in my mind like, oh, that's sort of an homage to the cover of the album London Calling. Tell me, where did you get the idea to lace those types of things in there, those references, and what ought we to be looking out for if you want to give one or two away, or just kind of, tell me what corners to be checking?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually something that in writing it, I had a lot of fun with. And then also working with Renzo, the artist, who, when I saw that cover, that was actually his alternate cover. I said, that's far better than the other one. We're going with that one. Yeah, so there's a lot of references in there. But, they don't move the story forward, but they're just a little bit of fun that some people will get. So whether that's, I'll give one or two away. There's about 6 or 7 hidden in issue 1. But the names of the characters, Rachel, Bella, Jesse, and Sheena, are the names of the 4 people in the band. And Sheena comes from the Ramones song, Sheena is a Punk Rocker. So that was, again, I was sort of going through that. I was like, I know that song. Yeah, that's who one of the characters is going to be called.
I love it. I love it.
There's a few others as well, so I won't go into all of them. But so that's like, I guess, in the story. And there's one in the artwork. One of the details that I insisted when in one of the pages was when it all kicks off. Basically, you've got this biological attack in London, and you see one of the characters' phones in that frame, and that is, it says it's 11:58. So it's 2 minutes to midnight, which is an Iron Maiden song. So that's another sort of really, it's only in there for a bit of fun, but it was a lot of fun sort of finding all these opportunities to stick things like that in.
Well, how cool. One last rock and roll or punk rock thing that I want to talk to you about before we move on. And this is just to compliment you guys. For the credits page for each issue of this book, you guys are doing a vinyl LP with the credits that you would see on an LP, except it's you guys. It's, the artist, the writer. I love that.
Oh yeah, thanks. That almost didn't make it. It was very, very last minute. It's actually, we probably needed some sort of credits page in here. It's actually it was a Queen album, actually, just that color. And we said, let's just use that as a base. And the name of, we're not sort of putting the name of issue 1 or 2 on the front cover, but there is the name of each issue is on that as well. And some of them are references to, the first one is called Rachel and the Heads of State, but some of them will be other references to other songs or other bands as well that we might try and get in there. Issue 3 is definitely the name of another song, but I don't want to give that away yet because that one's not out for a while.
Fair enough. What a cool idea, though. I just thought, as soon as I turned the page from the cover to that opening credits page, I was like, I'm going to like this. And I'll confess, I am a vampire guy. I'm increasingly a werewolf guy. Zombies typically have not been something that would draw me in. But you got me in with the punk rock and the rock and roll, and I'm not going to claim to be some kind of punk, but I've dabbled on the edges of it here and there to enjoy a little bit. But you got me in with the rock and roll, and then once you start bringing on the zombies, things do get wild, and it gets to be a lot of fun. So you made reference earlier to the idea of through an illicit drug, the members of Rachel and the Heads of State end up gaining some additional abilities. I'm not sure I would call it superpowers exactly. Maybe you would. They didn't seem like they gained, say, Captain America level strength, but their strength and their agility and their speed was all kind of enhanced, which helps them in fighting those zombies. Where were you trying to sort of dial that power level and the impact that the drug would have?
There is a bit of a line there. Obviously, you don't want to say, to anyone, oh yeah, take these drugs, and then you're going to be, you're going to be a superhero. Just, it is more on the sort of heightened senses, heightened reflexes, able to do things that they weren't otherwise able to do, but they don't turn into, you're right, they don't turn into Captain America or the Hulk or anything like that. And in issue 2, without giving too much of it away as well, there is a scene where they go into this fight and they get bettered by trained, soldiers and professionals that they're coming up against. So it isn't an all-encompassing superpower or can defeat anyone, just a get out of jail free card. It is still this will help me and this will maybe keep me going and give me a leg up in whatever situation I'm going to be in if you're there.
So this opening volume that issue 1 is out so far, issue 2 coming out on October 9th. You've got 5 issues planned for this first story arc. Is that correct?
Yes. So there's five issues planned for this first volume. They're all written-ish, being edited. We're working on number 3 at the moment. I have ideas for story arcs beyond volume 1. We'll obviously have to see how we go there. Hopefully, if we can get enough people interested in buying it, then we can help fund further story arcs. One thing I did want to do within this as well, there are hints, if anyone has read issue 1, I said it has been out for a month or so now. So Thurlow Grieve, who is the villain of this story arc, you see him on the phone with this silhouetted sort of video call sort of figure. So there are hints that he's working for someone else. There are sort of big bads, I guess, sort of in the background somewhere, which if it does go on to volumes 2 through 5 is sort of where I've got ideas for, then all of this can sort of start to build up.
Cool. Sean, is this your first comic writing endeavor?
It is. It's the first that I have fully pitched out and then published and written. I've written other things, other pitches, other ideas, and this one actually it was about 7 years in the making in terms of when I first had the idea and started writing out issue 1 to get to this point. But it's the first thing that's been published, and it's definitely been a massive learning experience from the writing process as well as then the publishing process. So obviously every edit, every page you write, you're learning something new. You send something to the artist and you've written this like it's a movie script. Like they can't move in these frames. Like we need to work on this and sort of just condensing every piece of action and everything you want to tell into one panel and the next one. So that's been a learning experience. And then there's also definitely been a learning experience on the publisher side. I think like any first-time writer, you've got this pitch, you get a few pages done, and then you think, great, I'm going to send this out to Image, I'm going to send it to Dark Horse, someone's going to pick this up, it's going to be the next bestseller, and then you just never get replies to these emails. Okay, well now what do I do? What are the other ways that I can take this forward? So that's definitely been a learning experience, but it's also been quite exciting to be able to ultimately have that final control, and then also find ways to get it out into the world myself.
Yeah, and I think the audience for this podcast would find this very interesting from the perspective of a first-time comic writer. How did things transpire once you figured out that, okay, look, this isn't going to be an Image book or a Dark Horse book or whatever, and Boom's not getting this right off the bat, so I got to make a pivot. What did you do from there?
I did have to sort of work out, okay, well, what is this going to cost? What's my commitment to this? How much am I prepared to put into this? It's a hobby, ultimately. You can't lose too much money on stuff like that. We've all got bills to pay. And yes, I was chatting. Basically, it came to a conversation with myself and the art team. I said, look, actually, let's go for this. Let's go for volume 1 at least, and then see where we go. I had never had any experience in anything like Kickstarters or anything like that. And again, I was like, well, I don't even know where to start there, to be honest. There's no one, it's quite, I heard someone say once that comic book writing and publishing is on one hand the easiest thing to get into because anyone can do it themselves, but it's also the hardest thing to get into because there's so few avenues of professional publication, and there are, I think, there is an online community that was definitely very helpful. I think everyone in the communities wants to help everyone else out and they want everyone else to succeed, but there isn't like a playbook that says, here's what you do this, then you do that, then you do that, and then you will be in these places and you'll be able to sell it, and then you'll be, it will be successful or not. So yeah, it is something you sort of just have to dive into. I found I just had to sort of make that commitment, dive into it, and work with Renzo and Jahch and say, let's just do this and let's see what happens.
Well, that's fantastic. So, I mean, you're putting yourself in there, you're putting your time, you're putting your money, and the strategy, instead of going with something like a Kickstarter, what you've decided to do was release it directly as a self-publication through a number of different outlets. I know this book can be purchased on Amazon, and I assume that's exclusively in a digital format, or can you buy a hard copy as well?
On Amazon, it is digital only in both English and Spanish. That's another decision we made with Jahch, the letterer, to translate it into Spanish. It's also available on Global Comics in English and Spanish. In the UK, it's available in digital and in print from a shop called Shift. They do print to order in the UK. And then it's available in, there's an Australian site called comics.one. It's available there, and it's now just available as of a few days ago as well on a web store attached to a podcast called My Kind of Weird. I guess the strategy with all of this was, originally it was Amazon only, but ultimately as a self-published book, I wanted to get into as many different places and get in front of as many different readers. So I'd say the strategy was more defined by where can I put this, rather than I defined it's going to be on Global Comics exclusively or Amazon exclusively. It's all about as much distribution as I can get, really.
Well, terrific. And I hope this first series is wildly successful for you. Assume for just a moment that it is. And so we'll call this out into the future. Let's assume that it has been a hit smash. What's next? What would you like to see done? You mentioned that, as a first-time guy, it's like, I gotta have a job. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so I've got 5 issues planned for Volume 1, and then we'll hopefully release that in a trade paperback that I can get, hopefully more physical retail through that as a self-published author, rather than physical single copy retail. So that would be the first plan. That would be step 1. And then there are a few more story arcs planned. I think just depending on, you said, let's see into the future, and assuming this is successful, then it would be great if a publisher wanted to come along and say, oh, that sold quite a few copies by itself. Why don't we take that on, and we can help bring story arcs 2 to 5 to life. Now that I've got more idea of what I'm doing, I'm not going to say I have a complete idea of what I'm doing, but I am thinking about, well, what might a Kickstarter for issue 2, for volume 2 look like, or volume 2 and beyond. So definitely, if I can make volume 1 work, then there's definitely all guns blazing on getting volumes 2 to 5 out there. Which is, well, I said 2 to 5. That's where my head's at in terms of potential story arcs, but again, we'll see.
Yeah, sure. I got to tell you, I really like the idea of single digital issues, largely followed by a print trade. For the books that I follow on Kickstarter, and I'm always eager when I see a new comic creator out there who has something that I think looks interesting to go pledge and go check out what they're doing. But sometimes I do find it a little frustrating to think what I ultimately want to have is a physical trade that I can put on my shelf. And I want to support this project as it's being funded and made along the way. And so more and more I'm going to, here's the $5 digital copy that I'll get for issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, whatever, as opposed to I want to do a little more and buy the physical copy. But at the same time, I'm like, you don't know whether they're all going to end up getting made, and you're just going to have a couple of physical copies that don't quite work. I really like the strategy that you're looking at there. I hope that goes great. Now, you referenced a second ago working with an all Latin American art team and also producing this book in Spanish. So let's start with this. How did you guys get hooked up, you and Renzo and Jahch? And once you did, what was the decision like from there?
Again, sort of got mentioned before, said I didn't really have any idea what to do. And similarly, like, I'm a writer, I can't draw, I can't paint, I can't do anything digitally. So there was no way, when I had this idea of a comic and I'd written this out, it's like, well, great, now what? How do I get this? How do I get someone to draw this? I don't know anyone who can draw it either. So I actually went and I found both Renzo and Jahch on DeviantArt, the website DeviantArt. I know a lot of people, they use that, they use Reddit. There's a few different places online where you can go and find artists. I posted on DeviantArt and I sort of asked people if they were interested. And then I commissioned a couple of test pages from a couple of different artists. And it was that actually for me was probably the moment when I realized or sort of, saw the power of like writing comics. When you're writing, it's a very singular process. You're writing it down on paper, but then once going from there to actually putting something out is such a collaborative process, and how different art styles will bring this to life. So I had the original idea for this was that it would be far more sort of not ultra realistic, but far more realistic artwork, far more clean lines. But there, and some of the other test pages that I commissioned were exactly that, and they looked great as well. But then when I working with Renzo, and he said, I think we can do something different here. I think we can do something, he said, better. And basically the art style, if people haven't seen it, the art style is it's not, I wouldn't say it's surreal or abstract in any way, but it's very sort of rough lines. I found it sort of brings the pace out of it a lot more than in any of the sort of really realistic or ultra realistic things did. And there was a few different things in there where we said, how can we speed it up? It is a fast paced comic, especially as the issue, if people have read issue 1, as it gets to the end of it and the action builds, and then they're escaping, and it's a lot more sort of quick lines, sort of pace lines, or not quite square panels, sort of diagonal panels, which sort of just they feel like you just read through it a lot quicker. That was sort of the process of working with Renzo, and then they are both based in South America. As you said, Renzo is Argentinian and Jahch is in Venezuela. And when I was working with Jahch and we're doing the lettering, they said, they translate as well. And they said, would you, if you're interested, I offer translation services. And at first I was a bit skeptical, but then as I worked with them and I thought about it, I was like, well, actually, we've got a South American team. They've got South American audiences. Renzo in particular has been, he's been in the industry for quite a long time, and he's worked with some big publishers. So he's got a following on social that I'm very jealous of at the moment. And so that, well, yeah, let's bring this out in Spanish. And that was, again, something I mentioned, the collaborative process. And just, I have very basic Spanish. I couldn't translate it properly into Spanish. And, I thought, well, you can paste things into Google Translate, but that just does not sort of even come close to the level of the work that they've done on the translation. And the best example of this in issue 1, when the band are playing on stage, and I had a bit of a go at writing song lyrics and making up a song that they might be singing. And that was when I read the translation for that, where rather than just translating the words that I'd put in English, they'd essentially rewritten the song so that it rhymed and then it flowed in Spanish as well. And that was the moment I was like, this is great. Yeah. This is high quality work.
Oh, how cool.
If anybody else is sort of considering translating their work into, at least into Spanish, then I'd be more than happy to put people in touch with Jahch, because the work that they did on that, like that was, it was quite amazing actually. They'd rewritten the whole, the thing, but it kept the exact same essence. So, I mean, yeah, I think I couldn't speak highly enough of that process. And now I'm quite glad that we did it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Terrific. Well, as I said earlier in this conversation, I hope this goes great. I think you've written a really fun comic, kind enough to give me a sneak peek at issue 2, and issue 2 is a blast. It gets, we got a lot of action in this next one coming up, and I am looking forward to that coming out on October 9th. So that everybody can see it and check it out. Hey, so if we've got listeners who are interested in the work that you're doing and what Renzo and Jahch are doing, where can we find you guys online?
So I'm on Instagram at Sean Golding Writes, all no punctuation, just at Sean Golding Writes. Renzo is at Renzo_Podesta, so RENZO _PODESTA. And Jahch is on Instagram at RJJComics9.
Well, terrific. And we'll include those in our show notes as well, so everybody will be able to access them. We have our first appearance of the letter Z here on the Graphic Novel Apostle podcast, so I appreciate that.
I did think that as I was saying it. I was like, that's definitely going to be different to maybe what other guests on the show might have said.
No, that's wonderful. And, I really enjoyed when we were emailing back and forth getting this set up, and you were talking about the coloring, that it had a U in it, and some of those other things that where our version of English in America is just going to be a little bit different from across the pond or over in Australia. And so, Hey, thank you. I've enjoyed this tremendously. I hope all goes great with this book, and I hope we get to talk again after we've had great success with this.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. And yes, hopefully we can get all 5 of these and then potentially more issues out, and maybe do a wrap up of like all five issues at the end of volume 1.
Well, I'd love that. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for being with us today. As always, you can find me on Instagram at Graphic Novel Apostle, or you can get us by Gmail at graphicnovelapostle@gmail.com. And until next week, keep reading those comics.